Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is author Lynette Brasfield and actress Jacqueline Wright. Lynette Brasfield was born and raised in South Africa. She graduated from Rhodes University and she earned a degree in English literature. She is with us today to talk about her first novel, Nature Lessons. It's a St. Martin's Press publisher. And what I want to know is this book has gotten so many awards already, but what were you doing before you wrote your first novel?
I think during all those years I was subconsciously becoming a novelist.
Background?
Yes, I was gathering background without realizing it. You know, I think that this novel is somewhat autobiographical, and I think that a lot of novels are sort of like an anagram of one's life. You know, you take a little bit here and a little bit here and you jumble it all up together, and what you shape and reform from your emotions and experiences becomes a novel. So I was in PR, and the main character in the book is an advertising copywriter who loves wordplay.
Oh, that's it. That's where that came from.
That's where that came from.
And what about journalism?
Journalism, well, that I think, I was on a very small newspaper in Johannesburg, and I learned a lot about folklore and things like that in doing some of the interviews. That aspect came into it too.
I'm going to ask you about that, to see what the native folklore, how it affected what you were doing. So we can go into that a little bit later. And then librarian?
That was a very brief stint. That was when I lived in Zimbabwe, and I just graduated and wasn't quite sure what to do, but I knew I loved books. So I went to the university library and asked for a job and worked as a librarian assistant for a while.
And then what brought you to Los Angeles, or to actually you came to the United States first?
Right. Well, my first husband was transferred to the United States in 1985, and we lived in Chagrin Falls, Ohio.
I wondered what you were doing in Ohio.
Yes, it was quite a shock to my system after
Does that
South
play
Africa.
into it anyway?
You know, I consciously made the decision to set the book partly in America and partly in South Africa, because I wanted to contrast the America and how wonderful America is in terms of being organized and the freedom that was not available in South Africa during the apartheid system. But that's just a small element of the book, but it was one of the sort of elements I wanted to
So from
have.
Ohio you came to California?
Yes, which was a happy day.
Just give us a little thumbnail of Nature Lessons. Just a little overview of what it's about, because there's a lot of questions I want to ask you.
Okay. You know, I think it's sort of a cross between a murder mystery and a memoir with a bit of black comedy thrown in as well. It's about a woman who goes back to South Africa to search for her mother, whom she believes is mentally ill, and the mother has gone missing. So she goes back to look for her, and she's believed her mother to be paranoid, possibly. But when she goes back to South Africa and uncovers some family secrets, she begins to wonder. So that whole question of whether she is paranoid or not comes to the surface.
Well, reading the book and listening to a lot of what you said and reading some of the press material that came out, you mentioned living with apartheid and how a person can have a guilty feeling about it. Tell us what apartheid actually is.
Apartheid was a system in South Africa that discriminated legally between whites and blacks. And so, for example, there was something called the Immorality Act. You could not even have a relationship with somebody of the opposite, of a different color. If you did, you were thrown in jail. So, you know, part of the book is this whole issue of how we see things differently. And my mother, actually, who is the model for the mother in the book, was paranoid and believed that the government was after our family and that our home was bugged and so on. And in writing and researching the book, I had this sort of epiphany that had she been black, her fears would have seemed very rational. So it's just how we see the world. And yes, she did have a mental illness. Biologically, her brain was disordered, so she had a fear that wasn't true. But a black person having that same fear would have had every right to have that fear because of the terrible system.
That's true.
So it sort of played with those
And
ideas.
then there was a word, kafir.
Oh, to this day, I don't even like to say that word.
I don't know. It's Kaffir.
Yeah.
Let's just spell it,
Right.
which meant.
Well, it's
is it a
equivalent to the
slang?
N-word, yeah.
Oh, it's
yeah.
a slang word because people use it in your novel. Or it's
Right, well,
been used.
in a derogatory sense.
Yes, I see.
Yeah.
I see.
There is a gentleman called Mark Mathabani who was brought up in South Africa, a black man, and he has written a book called Kafir Boy, which is sort of, an acknowledgement that this is a hurtful term, but he's going to use it anyway.
I see, to bring it out so that everyone
Exactly.
hears about it. And we were talking about the folklore. Did the African folklore influence white South Africans?
We learned a little bit about it, but it was such separate cultures. In the book, the folklore that I used was, for example, the stars are seen in different ways, so that what we in America see as Orion's belt, the Tswana people will see as 3 zebra. And
is that right?
Yeah, and this is partly because of the cultural differences and so on, but it's also because in the southern hemisphere, the stars are actually differently shown in the night sky.
Oh, they're situated in different away?
Exactly.
So they name it differently.
Yeah, because it looks different. So you've got the different culture and the different perspective geographically that's influencing that. Plus the stars that we're seeing don't even exist anymore, many of them, because they've been burned out. So a lot of them. So this whole idea of perception and how we see things differently for so many reasons, and we have to understand those differences.
Is that folklore prevalent in everyday life? Is it kind of like voodoo? Or not?
As a white South African, I was so separate from that. But a lot of black South Africans did believe in witchcraft, which these days we might call herbalism, because it's all, again, what you name it. That's sort of significant. But yes, it definitely played a role, I think, in many people's lives.
And in your writing the book, did it play a role? Did it?
Yes, because that was, part of my sort of thesis of how we all see the world differently. And so I brought in many of the folkloric tales into the book to sort of illustrate these things about perception and mystery, and how can you know what's real and what's not real, and what the shady sort of difference between sanity and insanity. And
then back again to the black and the white life. Did you feel guilty and that you had to explain things in this book? You did.
Yes,
I did. Had that.
Yes. I think anybody who is born white in South Africa, no matter how good you were on a personal level to people, or what you did to try and fight the situation of apartheid, you just have guilt because you are still benefiting from a system where other people are oppressed. And I think you always want to explain yourself. In America to this day, if I meet a black person, they ask me where I'm from, I have this moment of wanting to say, well, I'm from South Africa, but I am not,
It's just embedded in you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, guilt's a great emotional.
So it either helped you write the book,
in a sense,
probably
yes.
in a sense it did.
Yes. And then there was the guilt about my mother, because I did not go back to see her in real life, and she died. So I could have.
Was it 20 years? Oh, you didn't go back at all. In the book, this person goes back.
Exactly. That's what novelists can do. Yes.
You wished you had gone back.
Yeah, I have a lot of guilt that I didn't, so more guilt.
And then we have the behavioral problems of the mentally ill, which you bring to the forefront, which is what you were talking about a little bit, your mother imagining things. How do you do that blurry kind of in-between?
Yeah. Well, it was tough, the autobiographical part of that was my father did die when I was 9, and my mother after that believed that the poverty that we subsequently experienced was because of the government.
However, because of the government, not because of your father not being there.
No, she believed that, and she believed they were trying to split our family apart, and that she banished our relatives from our lives and believed that all my friends' parents were part of a conspiracy.
But that was because she had... was she ever diagnosed?
She was taken away to a psychiatric ward when I had a sister actually, unlike the child in the book, when I was 10 years old and my sister was 12.
Oh, she was taken away that early?
Yeah. And then when she came back, she told the relatives to get out of our lives, and they did, and I've never seen them since. So I don't know whether they were afraid of the stigma of mental illness or if they thought she was cured. But we kind of grew up with a situation rather similar to the child story in the book.
So you had to take care of yourselves because your mother really wasn't there.
In that sense, yeah.
And then when she came back, did you know how to deal with it? Did you know that there was fantasy in what she was saying, or did you believe what she was saying?
I did not believe what she was saying because of a couple of incidents that occurred to me personally that I knew could absolutely not be true. But I fought against it. My sister and I had different ways. I would try and get her to see the irrationality of her thoughts, which was crazy in itself because it was a brain disorder that I could do nothing about. But as an adolescent, I wanted to fight that. My sister wanted to avoid conflict, and so she would agree with what she said.
I see. So there's just different ways of dealing with things
Exactly.
like this. What one really big honor for you is NAMI, NAMI or
That's right,
NAMI, which is the National
Alliance for the Mentally Ill.
And you've spoken to their group. You've got an award from them about this book.
Right.
But I thought it was interesting because it's not a factual book. It's a fictional book.
Right.
And yet they gave you an award for dealing with mental illness.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Tell
originally
us how it was, because it must be very factual for them to come to you and do something like that.
Well, what happened was when I wrote the book, I thought that I would just always claim it was totally fiction. But I asked a psychiatrist to read the book to tell me whether the clinical picture of the mother hung together, because I had imagination and research in there. And that started the contact with NAMI. And this psychiatrist said to me, people are going to be really entertained by this book. They're going to love the book, and what's great about it is while they're enjoying it, they're going to be educated. And so the award, it was the Outstanding Literature Award, was to recognize that I had brought truth, emotional truth.
That's what I was wondering. It had to be something that they saw in it to support you and to...
Which was astonishing to me because I didn't write the book thinking, I'm going to write this to help people or I'm going to tell people about my life, because I never wanted to be a victim, and so I have never addressed it.
I see.
And
so what kind of advice do you give to members of a family that have mentally ill people in it?
NAMI is a good organization, NAMI.org, to go to find out more, and they have support groups and so on. But really, I don't feel qualified, and I'm just glad that by having just written this book that I just wrote it because I wanted to write fiction, and I used my own emotional life, and that it's helping people is a wonderful byproduct of something that is still giving me an enormous kick.
Maybe this is how you stay sane. This is how you I was going to ask you, how do you stay sane? But it seems like
I do everything opposite to what my mother did.
Opposite, and also then writing this book is kind of like relieved you of many of the tensions that may have been brewing for a while.
Yep, I think it did help.
Well, seeing how up you are, I was going, oh, this is kind of sad. This is very sad when I was reading, but I can see a different personality, and I think you have to read something with more of a positive, uplifting feel. And we're glad you wrote it.
Oh, thank you. Thank
you. Congratulations on your first novel. I know the second one is in the works.
Yes.
And good luck on that.
Well, thanks so much, Joan.
Thanks for watching us for this part of our show, and we'll be right back with Jacqueline Wright. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back. I'm here with Jacqueline Wright, actress and playwright. She was born and raised in Florida and graduated from the California Institute of the Arts. She's a member of the Ensemble Studio Theater, Theater of Note, and Ghost Road Company. She's an actress, as I said, and a playwright, and she's focusing mainly on theater, I think. Is that right, Jacqueline?
Yeah.
And why? You're in Hollywood, and you've got TV and film, and it seems like the stage has taken over your life.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think when I got out of school, I grew up being a real movie buff and not taken to that much theater, I guess. And so when I got out of school, well, I obviously did theater at school and loved it.
At CalArts?
Mm-hmm. And I think it sort of just became my home. So, like, for instance, I'll sit down and think I'm going to write a screenplay, and then I'll end up writing a play.
Oh.
So I think it sort of caught me a little bit by surprise, or maybe I would have.
Even yourself?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about CalArts because it's such a fabulous school.
It is.
And they have a great theater program, and I was wondering if that was one of the reasons, if that influenced you so much, like when you say you sit down to write a screenplay and yet you end up doing something for the theater.
Right. I think, well, I knew I wanted to be an actress, and I really love writing.
So is there an acting program there too?
Yeah, it's theater. Yeah, it's just a whole theater program.
Oh,
it's like a school of the arts. Almost all of the arts are represented.
They're all represented, but in the theater, you have to do everything. Are you in the fine arts department as well?
No, just
theater
the theater
arts. So who teaches in that?
Well, Libby Apple was there, who's not there anymore, but she was the dean then. Now it's Susan Solt.
Did those women have a influence on you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And Fran Bennett, who, I don't know, she did King Lear. They're connected. This is terrible that I don't know the name of the space, but the new...
Red Cat.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay, yeah,
So,
thank you.
So
they're connected.
They'll be able to go...
They're very powerful women in the theater. So I think I went to school thinking I want to perform and write. What medium... You know, and I love all mediums, but this just seemed to be the medium that I got work in and that I enjoy. And
acting classes. Did they do acting classes?
Yeah,
and do they bring celebrities, actors in, or did they have just their faculty?
They have people that have graduated from there come in, some of which are celebrities, some aren't. Like Ed Harris went to CalArts.
Oh, yeah. Oh, right.
So, who else? I don't know his name, and I should. He's a really talented actor, but the guy that played Pee Wee Herman. But anyway.
Paul Rubens.
Paul Rubens.
He went to CalArts
too? Yeah. So I don't know as if they would have people come, but Libby Apple was the dean, and she's the artistic director at Ashland, Shakespeare in Ashland, Oregon. You know, the Shakespeare
I see. That's
Company.
Very important.
Yeah.
Really
so they
good.
get, there's a real diverse amount of training, so you kind of pick up a little bit of everything. But I met, like, the director who directed my play. We met at CalArts.
Oh, yeah, tell us his name.
Matt Olmos.
The play we're talking about is Buddy Badette, which is playing at the McCadden Theater. And what's his name?
Matt Olmos.
And he went to CalArts
He went to
well?
CalArts. He was in the directing program, and he actually directed the first play I ever wrote at CalArts.
Oh, so you have a kind of
a
relationship on the stage.
Yeah,
oh, that's great.
So we I tend to really love collaborating with him.
Now, I mentioned that you belong to all these stage things. What is the Ensemble Studio Theater? What's special about that?
Well, they're originally out of New York, so EST New York, and which is known for, I suppose, developing, playwrights and new plays.
Oh, new plays.
And a lot of, amazing playwrights have come through there.
I see.
So it's a very reputable, new playwrights, new play company.
So what have they produced of yours?
This is the first play that they've produced. Well, I've been in a lot of workshops of theirs, and a different play of mine workshopped in EST New York, but this is the first play that they've fully produced, as a main stage.
So then, Theater of Note, how does that differ from the Ensemble Studio Theater?
Well, they're all different, but Ensemble Studio Theater is, again, here and in New York, so it's kind of nice to have an affiliate, so when you go, you can work both. Theater of Note is a small, really edgy, extremely talented company. It's a little more, it's a little different in that if I wanted to have something produced there, it's a company, it's a member ran company.
I see. They would take it to somebody else.
Well, they would do it, but and I've done plays there. My last play, Bing, was produced by Theater of Note, with, again, the same director, Matt Almos. But they're just very edgy. They also do new plays.
Do they go to different theaters around the city?
Just Note. It's Theater of Note is right near.
Oh, it's just their own theater.
Yeah, it's right
so
near Shandara's on right Sunset in Cahuenga. It's a funky little. It used to be a car garage.
Oh, I see.
So it's
So
pretty cool
they
space.
actually then have their own. It's like part of their theater, and
Right.
you're the
I'm just a
resident.
I'm a member of that company.
The resident company. I see. Okay, let's go on to Ghost Road.
Okay, Ghost Road Company is completely different. It's we create ensemble generated work, so everybody there is a writer and actor or writer designer. So we create pieces as an ensemble from start, and usually.
So do you each act in each other's plays?
Well,
or-
yeah, we basically. We basically improvise. So we'll have an idea of a story, like we did the Electra story. We did Clytemnestra, Sophocles, Sophocles' Electra, the Greek plays, and we'll basically modernize and improvise. It's just it's a longer process. It's like a 9-month
To do one piece?
to do one piece, yeah, to create it. And
then does it turn out finished? Or as part of the,
Yeah.
or as part of that process, the finished product as you go along?
I guess part of the process is figuring out whether it's maybe worth finishing. But it's it's a really fun. It's a different way of working, but it's an exciting way of working. So I guess I get a little bit from all three companies, but I enjoy in different ways.
So it's a learning experience in a lot of ways, but it's also involving you and your
Right,
work in
right.
a different way in each one of
Right,
these things.
right.
Okay, now
and
we're
they all
talking
connect too.
Do they all?
Yeah.
Do they work together?
A lot of times they'll work together. Ghost Road has been produced at Note. I have a feeling that they'll work even more together. A lot of members are cross.
I see.
Yeah.
So once they start working together. We've got that established.
Okay.
Now let's talk about Buddy Badette,
Okay.
which is playing at the McCadden now, and that's the latest thing you've written.
Right.
Give us a little story
All right.
line.
Okay, the producers are always better than this about me, but I think it's about allowing ourselves to learn from and to be affected by and touched by someone we didn't allow ourselves to know. I think that's ultimately kind of, what
The
feeling of the play
understory,
is.
right.
Of course, the journey is wild and takes a lot of different little turns. It's a very simplistic story, I think. And the woman that I guess would be on, Beth Berridge, who plays the lead actress, frankincense, stunning actress. I think a lot of the journey is just simply her getting outside of the door and taking her garbage out. She's agoraphobic, and I think that's
Because she can't leave
the house. And I think in a
But
simplistic
you have a lot
way.
of people like that in the play. You have
Yeah,
like
locked in
extroverts
lockers.
or
Right.
closed-in people or beating at each other in a way or showing each other up.
Right.
And it's this little tiny stage, and it's like so much. How do you make so much go on there?
Well, that's Matt. He's really good at.
That's the director?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's important. I was going to ask you how important the director is to a project like this.
I think it's probably the most important because they pull the whole vision together, and it's a big play. There's 10 actors in it. The design elements for that kind of space are huge. The sound is huge. The sound designer.
Sound was great.
Yeah, it's
because
great.
there's so many. Must be so many cues.
Oh yeah, it's
And
insane.
lighting cues.
Yeah, it's insane. The amount of cues. It's insane. Especially for such a small space and.
Do you write all those in, or does
The director does all that. Yeah.
He puts that all in?
Well, he's not. We have a sound designer, professional
But
sound
I mean,
designer.
he tells the sound people and the light
Well,
people
they all
what to do.
they all get together, and basically create it together, create their vision together. So I think everybody kind of brings something to it.
You played 2 roles.
Right.
Tell us about your roles. I can't believe, first of all, before you tell us anything, I can't believe you changed so fast. Do you have like Velcro pulling and
Yeah.
pushing? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have insane changes, and I have someone backstage helping me as well. But I play this nebbish, real warm-hearted fella named Buddy.
And how does Buddy talk?
He's very sweet, and
Tell me how would Buddy talk to me?
I very much love your portrait, and I very much, I think Buddy would be very nervous, but
And Buddy wears glasses.
Yeah,
and you have your hair slicked down.
yeah, and he's very sweet and loving.
lovable, yeah. And then the next thing we see you on stage, I mean, it's like you go out the back door and you come in the front door with this huge wig on.
Right, he's locked in his locker, and he's always kind of, teased and so on. And when the next thing you know, when he bursts through the locker, the locker starts shaking, and out comes, I guess, his inner Budette, or I don't know, however you want it, which is a superhero. So by day, he's Buddy, out to kind of help the world, and by night, he's Budette.
He's a girl with a big wig.
Who's extremely insensitive and
she
strong and loves to disco dance and very confident and not sensitive, very insensitive.
And what's that voice?
She's just really big. I don't know. I don't
She
know.
is really big. How do you do that? It's like you're just going back and forth. And you change shoes.
Yeah, so I get to be really big, and I get to wear
And you look
enhanced,
huge. Do you enhanced everything?
Yeah, enhanced
Do you
everything.
have to write a nudity disclaimer in this show?
You mean
No,
because
for the
of
rest
all
of
the nudity?
Yeah, because of the whole cast is standing
Not
there.
all the cast. The cast got more and more of the cast. Well, some people agreed to be nude as the rehearsal process went on. I think when they realized,
little by little.
I think when they realized, that there, I felt a real sincerity to why there's nudity, and kind of a silly, but also, I guess, the expression of freedom and
Right. Do we mention that? Is that
I don't
mentioned in
know.
the press releases, or is it mentioned
I
at
don't
the
think
theater?
so.
Like
We'd probably get
there'd
more
be
audience,
nudity?
but no, I don't think so.
Because
It's really silly nudity too.
it is silly, and,
yeah.
and I think that's what makes it work.
Right.
The
So
whole
we were
thing.
really fortunate to get really talented actors that were also willing to take off their clothes for,
For a nanosecond, but they were like real hippies,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it was good.
Yeah.
It was free the world.
Yeah.
And thank you for coming and freeing us.
Joan.
I kept saying, every time you went, I can't believe this girl is changing again. You were wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And thank you for coming and being with us
Thank you for
today.
having me.
Thanks for watching, all of the viewers, and keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 917. We'll see you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles. Bye.